Okay, so this is a shiur called Assorted Ideas on Bechukosai. Okay, we have three ideas. Sorry, we have one idea. We have one commentary that I want to read through and just see what ideas we get out of it, and then one midrash that I have no ideas about. Okay, that's the plan here. Okay, so the first all right, now I'll share the screen. First thing is an idea from the R ibn Kaspi on why the Torah Shebechsav, why the written Torah does not mention Olam Haba. And I just want to point people to this article I wrote. Sorry, hold on a second here. Afterlife. Okay, so I wrote an article on May 15th, 2020 called Parshas Bechukosai, What About the Afterlife, in which I summarize 7 answers from Rishonim to that question, and then I give my own answer, okay, which is an 8th answer. And so now I have found a 9th answer, okay? Just out of curiosity, what have you heard? Again, we're not going to go over. Actually, what we'll do, yeah, what have you heard? And then since I already summarized it, I'll do a summary of the summary of the summary, just without going into any of the sources. What have you heard about why the Torah Shvichsav never mentions uh, Olam Haba? Yeah, tomorrow.
I think I might have read your article, but I'm not sure. But I don't remember for sure. But like that, it gives people the wrong emphasis.
Okay, that is definitely an idea. Yeah, I also haven't reread my article, but yeah, I'd probably mention that. Anyone else?
I think I've heard that it shouldn't be a motivation.
Right. I think is that what tomorrow is that what you meant,
Oh,
or you meant something
sorry,
else?
I actually didn't 100% hear
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay, then yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing my
okay.
best.
All right, no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you're here at all. Okay. Okay, so here, quick summary of the 7 answers from the Rishonim. Okay, so the Rambam's answer is that the real reward is not the brachos on the klalos, but the brachos on klalos are to facilitate our pursuit of the real reward. Okay, but does that answer the question? No, it doesn't. Okay, fine. I'll have to go back and check that out inside the Abrav now. Yeah, this does not answer the question. Interesting. Okay, fine. Ibn Ezra holds that it is Olam Haba is very difficult to grasp, and so the Torah doesn't dwell on it. And so it just mentions the physical rewards because that could be understood by everyone. And then basically, Olam Haba is relegated to Torah Shebal Peh, which can be taught to each individual student as they become ready for it. Okay, answer number 3 is the Ramban or the Sefer Chinuch, who maintain that you can prove Olam Haba independently of Torah, because it's a philosophically demonstrable concept, and he holds that there's no need for the Torah to mention it because any more than the Torah needs to mention any other scientific truth that could be demonstrated outside of Torah. Okay. Answer number 4 is the Ran and the Kuzari, who hold that I'm just going to read this because I don't remember this one. The majority of the people in ancient and modern times deny the reality of Hashgacha Pratis, of individual divine providence. This denial was rampant among Jews as well. Were the Torah to only promise spiritual reward and punishment after death, then these misguided Jews would take this as a confirmation of their deistic worldview. In other words, if the Torah talked about Olam Haba and not the rewards in Olam Hazeh, people would say that there is no Hashgacha in Olam Hazeh. So basically the Torah seems to go and I guess not course correct, but like to go on the opposite extreme and highly emphasize the rewards and punishments in Olam Hazeh. And then once you realize that there's rewards in Olam Hazeh, then of course you're going to realize there's reward in Olam Haba for our soul. Okay, Sadigon is number 5, who says that there were a lot of Odei Avodah Zarah who engaged in behaviors and practices for worldly reward. And Hashem didn't want people to think that if you serve him, then you don't get any of that reward. So he emphasized the what do you call it? The rewards in this world to refute the Odei Avodah Zarah. And then I wrote in my summary here, there was no need to mention spiritual rewards since the promises of physical rewards were only included in the covenant to refute the false promise of physical blessings by the Odei Avodah Zarah. Oh, and I wrote in parentheses, apparently the Ovdei Vodazar of that era did not yearn for spiritual rewards, which is why there was no need to mention them. So in other words, the brachos and klalos in the Torah Shebiksav are polemic, and the polemic was not necessary about the spiritual rewards. Okay. Answer number 6 is that interesting. Kuzari and the Ran, that there is an allusion to the reward of the soul in Hashem's phrases in the brachos. I will walk among you, I will place my dwelling among you, and I will be God unto you. Okay. And yeah, it's interesting. That is very similar to the new one. I don't know. We'll have to see if it is the same. And then 7, the Abravanel's approach is that the rewards and punishments mentioned in Bechukosai and Kisavo are for the whole nation, and the nation can get physical rewards as a result of their zechus and their avonos, but you can't have a national afterlife. So that's only an individual thing. So it's just not relevant to the way that the Torah is talking about it. Okay. So again, those are my summaries of the Abravanel summaries of these sources. If you really want to understand them, you have to look in at least the Abravanel, but certainly in the original sources. Okay, my answer is based on the Rambam, which is that you can't understand Olam Haba at all. Sorry, you can't relate to the reward in Olam Haba because it's purely non-physical. And if the Torah were to talk about Olam Haba, it would have to promote a fantasy, something that is purely based in the imagination, which could lead in unhealthy directions. So what the Torah does is it promotes, it talks about the rewards in this world, which can serve as a lo lishma until a person can like arrive at an attachment to Chachma, and then they'll get Olam Haba no matter what. So that's my summary. Okay, again, for details, read the article. I just wanted to like cover those bases. Okay, so we're not going to discuss those though. All right. Here's the new answer. So this is from the R Ibn Kaspi, and you have to understand about the R Ibn Kaspi. Okay, how would I put this? The R Ibn Kaspi is, and this is my characterization of him, sometimes he talks like a, I don't know if the word is jaded, but kind of like a jaded or an elitist rationalist. Okay, and what I mean by that is, there are certain people like the Rambam who will write for everyone, but he'll like put in messages for people who are like on a higher level who could pick up on his hints. Ibn Kaspi just does not really, it's like he's not even talking to the average person. He's just talking to like philosophically elite people, and he'll sometimes talk in a very dismissive way about the masses. Okay, so I just wanted to like brace you for what he's about to say. Okay, so I put the ChatGPT translation here, but I'm going to read it in the original. So this is his entire commentary on the brachos and the klalos. It's very short. He says, "Gam zos parasha ekater ba kikvar kadmuni hamafarshim." So I'm going to be very short in my my comments on this parsha because the mafarshim have already preceded me with this. Rak echadish me'at. I'm just going to give you a little chiddush v'omer, and I'll say as follows: Ki mavur ba'atmo ki zos haTorah nimsra lahamon ha'am kulo lahagos ba tamid. It is clear that this Torah was given to the masses to be involved with constantly. Okay, ChatGPT says to constantly engage with. Ve'in ha'hamon mevin hamuskalos. The masses don't understand intellectual concepts. Ad she'chaber lahem Moshe k'mo sefer hanefesh o mash achar teva, to the point where someone like Moshe would compile a book for them, like Aristotle's book on the soul or Aristotle's book metaphysics. Okay, Shihego Botami, that they should be involved in constantly. In other words, if Moshe wrote a book on metaphysics for the nation, not going to do anything. They're not going to be able to understand it, and they're not going to engage in it in the same ways as people don't read Aristotle's books on the soul right now. Okay, so what did he do? Tikun hahamon sheyeh lahem sefer yehegubo tamid. So it was of necessity for the masses to have a book that they can be constantly involved with. Therefore, he compiled this book for them. Now, sidebar, I don't know why he's saying Moshe compiled this book for them. That's weird lashon, right? Because it makes it sound like Moshe is the one who arranged the Torah for them. Okay, now I don't know if he has some sort of radical view on the relationship between the text of Torah Bechsav and the Nevuah of Moshe. Rambam in the eighth Iker holds, or maybe he writes this in the seventh Iker. I can't remember which Iker he writes it in. I think in Torah Min Hashemaim that Moshe wrote the Torah like a stenographer, like word for word from Hashem, whereas using the word of compiled does not seem to like match that. Yeah, Tamar?
I have a question on his earlier stuff about
Well, you're very quiet.
of metaphysics.
I can barely hear you.
Now, is this better?
No. Let me see if there's something on my end. I heard you earlier, but let me just see if there's something that changed. No, nothing changed on my end. My volume's at max.
Okay.
I mean, I
try to
can hear
talk
you.
really
It's just very
quickly.
quiet.
Okay. I have a question on the earlier thing about the book of metaphysics, like
Yeah.
example. He said odd, and I see also in the translation it's until. It sounds like that. It almost sounds like he's saying they do understand metaphysics if Moshe writes a book for them.
Okay, yeah. So I would translate odd differently then. So odd sheyichaber lahem Moshe, to the extent that, or to the point that someone like Moshe would, I'm going to say would compile a book for them, such as a book on the soul of metaphysics, which they can always engage with. Yeah, in other words, like it wouldn't do them any good if Moshe did this, and therefore it's necessary for him to give them a book that they can be involved with. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so I did for whatever it's worth, again, ChatGPT 4.0 is still not, perfect. I asked it the question about Ibn Kaspi. Hold on here. So I asked it, I said, does Ibn Kaspi talk about the compilation of Torah elsewhere in his commentary? So it referred me to a book, Gevia HaKesef, and it referenced the preface and Gevia HaKesef 1. I have not looked at that, okay? And I also know that Ibn Kaspi has written a lot of philosophical books that just have not been, are not really available in easy formats. So if anyone wants to look into that, then, go ahead and let me know. Okay, but anyway, here's his main point. Ulaman lo yihezeh sefer reik mina muskalos. In order that this book not be void of intellectual concepts, Sam bo b'makomos nifradim ma'amarim niflaim mechachmas hateva u'mechachmas ha'elokus. So he scattered in it separate, individual wondrous statements from the natural sciences and from metaphysics. Kadeshi sefer shalom, so that the book could be complete. V'yavur lechol shezo haTorah min hashmayim hi, to show to everyone that this Torah is from heaven. Okay, so despite what he said about Moshe compiling it, he definitely holds that Torah is min hashemayim. Ubezeh yikablu toelas ba hayichidim segulos, and through this, the elite, the special individuals, how do they translate it here? Select individuals can receive benefit from it. Im kain mavu. Okay, fine. So in other words, Hashem scattered individual statements that are rich in scientific or metaphysical content, so that the people who are on the level to be involved in this can get stuff out of the Torah. Okay, even though it's not going to be of use to the masses. Im kain mavur ki min ha'hakreach haya shahaya mefursam yoser b'zeh sefer. Sorry, yeser rav b'zeh sefer min muskal k'mosh hamishtamshim b'mefursamus ravim mihamishtamshim b'muskalos af kitzivam hakel es ha'am anashim vatap b'krisa sefer hazeh. Okay, I got to read that in English here. It is evident then that it was necessary for the prominent content in this book to be more accessible than the intellectual content, just as there are more users of accessible knowledge than users of intellectual knowledge. Although the Torah commands the assembly of men, women, and children to read this book. Okay, I take issue with the ChatGPT's translation of accessible knowledge. It's translating this phrase mifursamos. Okay, so mifursam literally means like public, like pirsum, like publicly well known. He could mean accessible knowledge, but the Rambam uses the term mifursamos to be it's also hard to translate in English, conventional truths versus theoretical truths, or subjective truths versus objective truths. Okay, in other words, like Rambam uses this when he's talking about Adam and Chava before the Chet and after the Chet, that before the Chet, they were involved in the world of emes and sheker, of objectively true and false statements and ideas. And they did not care about what he calls mifursamos, about like things that are regarded by people by people at large as good or bad. So that's why, for example, they did not view nakedness as bad. Nakedness is something that is not objectively. There's nothing in the realm of objective truth and falsehood. It's that people either shun nakedness as bad, or they view it as good. Okay. So similarly with like many other things in society that have to do with, kavod and its opposite, or pleasure and its opposite, in the world of like subjective human emotions, there are things that are labeled good and bad. And that's what the majority of people are involved in. But the world of emes and sheker, which is the world of ideas and the world of concepts, most people are not really involved in. So that's what I took him to mean, that let's go back and translate the way I would translate it, that if so, it's clear that it was necessary. Shahaya hamafursam yoser rav bazeh hasefer mina muskalos, that like these subjective popular values should occupy a greater portion of the Torah than concepts. Just as the people who like engage with these subjective values are more numerous than the people who engage with ideas. Okay. To the point where he says, even to the extent that, although the Torah says, no, not although the Torah says, af kitivam, I'm going to say, and the Torah even commands the assembly of men, women, and children to read this book. Okay, that's Hakel. Okay, so in other words, the Torah has to be geared towards the masses and has to be abundant in things that the masses care about, because otherwise they're not going to read it, right? How many people pick up a book on calculus, or math in general, as opposed to, let's say science, right? The vast majority of people don't buy books on science, but what do they buy? They buy books on how to eat healthy so that you look beautiful, like it has to appeal to their value systems, so that's what he's saying about the Torah. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so then he says his theory. Im kain, if so, roy me'ata shiyihu habrachos v'klalos sovavos anyanim gashmiyim. Therefore, it is proper that the blessings and curses revolve around physical matters, physical concepts. V'chein rov Yehuda Torah, and the same thing with the majority of the promises made in the Torah. Kvar zachar Rabbeinu Moshe ki gam hatovos v'haros b'dvarim hagashmiyim mevim umonim l'inyanim haruchtaniyim. Moshe, meaning Rabbeinu Moshe is the Rambam, also mentioned that the good and bad things that are physical in the Torah bring a person or prevent him from engaging in spiritual things. Aval lo haisa haTorah reka mizachiras hayud hatov haruchani shehi tanu gashmi klal aval b'kutsara. Okay. However, this really should belong to the next paragraph. However, the Torah is not devoid of mentioning the spiritual reward that could be brought about, but it does so briefly. Okay, how so? He says, after promising all the physical successes, Amar, he says, he says, I will place my dwelling, God's dwelling, among you, and my soul, or I would say, nafshi is my being, okay, will not abhor you. Okay, so what does this mean? He says, V'hine shechon Hashem imanu, God dwelling among us, the presence of God dwelling among us, v'nafsha lo tigal bo, and his being not abhorring us, shaha'olam izeh hid baknu b'seichel hapoal, which amounts to our attachment to the active intellect. Okay. I don't want to get into the whole thing of the active intellect, but basically the Aristotelian concept of how the mind works and how the world works posited this concept of the active intellect, which was an angel that basically was an intermediary between man and God, that the way man gets knowledge is through this angel, and the angel is responsible for all ideas, all forms in the physical world. So basically, like the closest that man can get to relating to the non-physical, man cannot relate directly to God, but we can, through knowledge, like interface with God. In other words, when God gives knowledge to man, he does so through this angel. This is represented by the Kruvim, by the angels on the Aron. This is represented by the angels that guard Gan Eden. This is a whole concept of the way that man's mind works is through this intermediary of this Malach. And the only possible exception was Moshe, who spoke with God face to face. And in that sense, Moshe was the Malach. Moshe was the intermediary, between us and God in terms of the Torah. Okay, so again, this is a whole concept that I have no idea what it's about. Like it's, I don't know how much of this is outdated Aristotelian ideas or how much of it is like, Yisodei Torah. But we'll just take this for granted here that he's saying that this high level of relating to God through the active intellect is being alluded to here by saying that God will place his dwelling amongst us and his being will not abhor us. Okay, so what is the nature of this? This is not a physical pleasure. This is the ultimate spiritual pleasure. This is the only means of preservation and continuation that is possible for us physical beings. In other words, the only way we really outlive our physical bodies is through the soul, which clings to God through the active intellect and then lasts after death. If since this book is given to the masses, and this secret is sealed, and the only person who can understand it is 1 in 1,000 or 10,000. So therefore, it is hinted only once or twice in very few words. Okay. So he's basically saying that in the blessings of the Torah, the majority of it is physical, because that's what people are going to relate to. But there's this one phrase, "V'nasati mishkani b'sochachem v'lo tigal nafshi eschem," which is alluding to something that's purely spiritual. And that is enough for the one discerning individual in 1,000 or 10,000 who could understand what's going on. And it is talking about Olam Haba there. Okay, and that's what he's going to care about. And that person's not going to really care about the physical blessings as much. Okay, so it is alluding to Olam Haba. Okay, and then one more paragraph here, and then we'll be done with this answer, and then we could talk about it. The hefek zeh b'klalos, amar achar hamaves. So conversely, in the curses, it says after death, v'nasati pigrechem al pigre gilu lechem v'go'ala nafshi eschem. I will place your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols, and my soul or my being will abhor you. Okay, so he says v'im achar mosam tigal nefesh Hashem bam. So if after death God's being abhors them, Zehu ha'ibud lanafsham. This signifies the destruction of their souls. Okay, so in other words, if you had this phrase that God abhors you, that if it just was that phrase in isolation, you could say that is talking about some distancing of hashgacha. But here it literally says after God kills you, then his soul will abhor you. That must be talking about the afterlife. Okay, and then he says Uma yoel lahamon. What benefit would this be for the masses? Koshkein ledor hahu gase moach, especially to that generation of coarse brains. Okay, talking about the people who went out of Egypt. What benefit would it say if you told them, im bechukosai telechu, if you walk in my statutes, tizku l'chaylam haba, you'll merit the life in the world to come. V'im lo tishmu lo tizku lahem, and if you don't listen, then you will not merit it. This is like someone who's shouting at idols or playing music among the dead. In other words, if you told this to a Jew who was, who just emerged from 210 years in the Egyptian culture, where even their afterlife was all about physical pleasures and avoiding like physical pain, and you tried to tell them about this like purely spiritual existence, they're not going to listen to you, and it's not going to have any effect. Okay, so essentially what his answer is, so the question is, why doesn't the Torah mention Olam Haba? His answer is it does, but it only hints at it. And here are the two hints of v'nasati mishkani b'sochem lo tigal nafshi eschem, and v'nasati pigrechem al pigre gilulechem v'gal nafshi eschem. And it hints at it because the majority of the Jewish people, this book is a book for the Jewish people as a whole, and the majority of the Jewish people are not going to be able to relate to purely spiritual phenomena, and it's not going to motivate them. And therefore, the majority of the brachos and klalos are physical, and the yechidim, the individuals who can understand this, will gain from this what they gain. And that's his answer. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to give you one more just precedent for an answer like this. Okay, oddly enough, is from someone who would probably absolutely hate the Ibn Kaspi, which is the Ramban. Okay, because the Ramban was very against Aristotle and certain trends of rationalism, and the Ibn Kaspi was very Aristotelian. So the Ramban, on the first Ramban in the Torah, quotes Rashi, who says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. So Ramban quotes Rashi, who quotes Rabbi Yitzchak. Lo hayatzarech lahaskil haTorah ela mihachodesh hazeh lechem. The Torah did not need to begin with only needed to begin with this month shall be for you the first of months. Shehi mitzvah rishona shnitzal Israel. It was the first commandment given to Israel. Okay. Umatam pasach babreshis. Why did the Torah begin with the account of the creation? Okay, so what answers does Rashi give? Or Rav Yitzchak, Sh'im Yomer Umas Olam Listim Atem, if the nations of the world say, you guys are thieves, Shikavashtem Lachem Artos Shiva Goyim, you conquered the lands of the 7 nations, Haim Omrim Lahem, then the Jews will say to them, Kol Ha'aretz Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the entire earth belongs to God, V'nasna La'asher Yashar Be'enav, and he gave it to the ones to whom it is proper in his eyes, Uvirtzono Nasna Lahem, and he gave it to them willingly, by his ratzon, with his favor. Uvirtzono not len, and by his will he can take it away from them, v'nasna lanu, and give it to us. He could take it away from them and give it to us. V'zo agada b'lashon shekaspa Rabbeinu Shlomo b'firushav. This is the midrash as was written by Rashi in his commentary. Okay, so I don't know if you know what the Ramban's kushya is on this, but what problem do you have on the question? Okay, there's obviously problems with the answer of why are the non-Jews going to listen? Okay, but what problem do you have with the question of why does the Torah need to begin with Bereshis? Can't it just start with HaChodesh Zelachem? Yeah, tomorrow.
I guess. Oh, is my audio better now?
Yeah, it is. I don't know why.
Okay, good. I had headphones that were messing up, I think. Yeah, okay. So I mean, it's just like the question here from Rabbi Yitzchak is taking a premise that the Torah is just mitzvos, and right. I don't know where that premise is coming from.
Okay, right. Yeah, definitely the Torah is mitzvos, but to say it's just mitzvos to the point where it could have just omitted from Bereshis all the way to Shemos Perek Yud Aleph, that sounds wild. Okay, so that's the Ramban's question. He says, V'yesh lishol ba, we can ask on this. Kitzorah gadol hu lahaskil haTorah b'Bereshis bar Elokim. There's a great need for the Torah to start with Bereshis bar Elokim. Ki shor shamuna. This is the root of all of our conviction. V'she'enu mamin bazev v'choshev she'olam kadmon hu kofer beker ve'en lanu Torah klal. If someone doesn't believe in this and thinks that the universe is eternal, then he denies the fundamental principle, and he has no Torah at all. Okay, so he's just taught. It's interesting. He's not addressing why. He's not addressing how Rabbi Yitzchak can suggest that you don't need the Torah from Bereshis all the way through HaChodesh Zelachem. He's really talking about why. How can Rabbi Yitzchak say that the Torah doesn't need to talk about Bereshis? Okay, but he's going to answer with more than that. Okay, so here's his answer. Hatshuva, because Ma'aseh Bereshis is a deep secret, an esoteric idea. It cannot be understood from the psukim. Okay, so the only way that you can know the Ma'aseh Bereshis is not from the psukim, but you can only know it clearly from a tradition going all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and one who knows it is obligated to conceal it. Okay, so this is what we call the secret of Ma'aseh Bereshis, or what people refer to as Kabbalah, but according to the old school Kabbalah of Chazal. Therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak said that you don't need to start the Torah with Bereshis Rabbah. And the account of what was created on day 1 and day 2 and the other days the ha'arichos b'yetziras Adam v'Chava, and all the whole going at length at the creation of Adam and Chava, v'chetam v'onsham, and their sin and their punishment, v'sibur Gan Eden, grishas Adam mimenu, and the telling of Gan Eden and the Adam being cast out of it. Ki kol ze lo yuvan bina shlema min ksuvim. All of this cannot be understood completely from the psukim. Okay, which by the way is my my proof. I don't think I need a proof, but like if anyone ever says, how do we know that we don't take the first part of the Torah literally? Okay, you see it right here in the Ramban that you can't understand these things properly from Bereshis through Adam Harishon and the expulsion from Gan Eden. You can't understand it completely from the Pesukim. You need this sod, which the Ramban holds is through a Kabbalah. The Rambam holds is through like metaphysics and philosophy. But yeah, then he goes on. B'kolshkin sipur hamabul v'haflaga she'ein tzorach behem gadol. All the more so the account of the flood and the dispersion, where it is not so necessary. V'yaspik la'anshei Torah. Okay, yeah. This is the part that I wanted to get to. V'yaspik la'anshei Torah bil'adei haksuvim ha'eleh. And it's enough for the people of the Torah to rely on. Without these psukim, v'yaminu bichlal b'nizkar lahem b'aseres hadibros, and they could just believe in the statement, the general statement in the Aseres HaDibros, quote, Ki sheishes yamim asa Hashem es hashemayim ves haaretz, es hayam es kol shabam v'yanach b'yom hashvi. God, in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth, and the sea and all that is in it, and he rested on the seventh day. V'tisher hayadia liyichidim shabehem halacha lemoshe misinai im Torah shabal peh. And the rest could remain the rest of the knowledge can remain as a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, as a tradition to Moshe from Sinai, for individuals with the rest of Torah's Baal Peh. Okay, so basically he's saying that, so again, he's strengthening the question, which is, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, if your goal is just to convey the yesod that God created the world, you don't need to talk about it at length. All you need is just the statement, God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And you would basically have, that would be enough for the masses. And then the individuals who knew more science and knew more metaphysics and who had the secret Kabbalah could get the full idea. So again, he's not answering the question. He's just trying to strengthen the question. But what I'm getting out of this is you see that that's the exact same model that that the R ibn Kaspi is using, which is, why is the Torah not talk about Olam Haba? Because it doesn't need to. It just needs to address those individuals with a hint, and that's and then leave the masses to rely on the main psukim, and the individuals who are qualified can take from those hints, the knowledge that they have with the rest of their knowledge from outside of Torah. Okay, so there is precedent for this approach. Okay, any questions on this? Because that's all I have to say about this idea. Okay, I hope that was useful. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording and start a new recording.